Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. I am Tae Young. I am the producer for today's educational broadcast series, Second Tuesday Events for Event Professionals. We are now on our 5th episode. I work for Blau Experiential Event Services, which is our series sponsor. Blau Experiential offers a complimentary event evaluation service to potential clients at no cost, and you get valuable professional advice to determine if your event has the right components to be successful. No risk, no charge. Just go to the website blauexperiential.com and look for the button that says book a complimentary evaluation. Today's topic, 2024 hacks, rethinking the way we source venues. To start the show, I'm going to introduce us to our host. Now, I think many of you may know him already, but I will say a few things. He has covered the exposition industry for my favorite Exhibitor Magazine since 2002. He's also served as a consultant to Expo 2020 in Dubai. And I'm not surprised, but he's won numerous regional and national awards. And he's written a book that I think we as event professionals all need to read. It's about how world expos and trade fairs have shaped history and our everyday lives. And the title of the book is Flying Cars, Zombie Dogs, and Robot Overlords. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Charles Pappas. Okay, Charles, it's all yours.
Thank you, Tay, and good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. A long time ago, I read a line from the poet Rainer Maria Rilke that has stuck with me ever since, and it goes, "I want to be with those who know secret things." When I think of doing events well, and the secrets to doing them well especially, or at least without the sky falling, I think of Joan Eisenstodt. Joan has done meetings and events professionally since 1975, and back in 1981, she founded Eisenstodt Associates, a Washington, D.C.-based meeting consulting and training company. But you might even say she's been doing events since 1954, when she started holding street fairs to raise money for polio research after a neighbor contracted the disease. And in the years since, she's immersed herself in the industry like no one else. And that shows in the honors she received. And just some of them include induction in the Events Industry Council Hall of Leaders, a Lifetime Achievement Award as an educator by the PCMA Foundation, and for contributions to education by the IACC and the NSA, which Joan assures me is the Association of Speakers, not the one for spies. Sure, Joan. But after all these years, I think what she's really known for is her ability to change. In this case, evolving her business from doing full service meetings to consulting on things like policies, RFPs, contracts, and of course, venues. Accordingly, today, she's going to give us insight on finding venues that will help make your event more of a victory than a calamity. Joan, it is nice to see you today, and welcome to the show.
Charles, thank you. Lovely introduction. Thank you for revealing my age and my activities. That was lovely.
Joan, it's been a minute, as I mentioned, since you started doing events in 1975 and started your business in 1981. And in fact, 81 was the year that Comdex Computer Expo was first held. So leading into venue selection, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen over that time?
It's an interesting question. And the reason it's interesting is, and I think about this often, the industry, for those who have joined us and those who will hear this, the industry goes through so many cycles. And what I think is interesting is that as a result of COVID, I believe, we have cycled back to what I think are the not best habits. Early in my career, I learned the phrase that the industry often uses about site selection, and that is the only thing that matters are rates, dates, and space. I think that we got much better at that. The Events Industry Council had APEX, Accepted Practices Exchange, where we put into place some better practices, some more thorough gathering of information. And sadly, I think that because of layoffs, because of rushing, because of a lot of us having to change the venues, the cities, the dates of our meetings, that we've gone into acting much more rapidly. And we've gone back to rates, dates, and space and not thinking. So we evolve and then we, what do you call it, unevolve, revolve, unevolve. I think that what frightens me, Charles, is that because we as an industry have turnover, that we don't pass along the information that a lot of us have learned and that should be best practices.
You know, I think you're right. I think partly due to COVID, there's been a regression, turnover, people simply leaving the industry, and there's been a little way to pass that knowledge on. You know, it's not like there's an institutional memory that necessarily gets transferred. So that kind of leads me to my next question for you. Overall, when marketers are selecting destinations and sites and venues now, what are the top issues they need to address in 2024? And connected to that, and maybe just as important, what don't they know that they don't know when selecting a venue?
Oh my gosh. So this is like asking who's your favorite child, who's your favorite friend, who's your favorite anything. What's difficult about saying that is that it really does depend on the organization. It depends on the event. It depends on the time of the year. Let's use this week as an example. PCMA, which you noted has honored me, in fact, twice, is holding its annual meeting right now in San Diego. People were delayed getting there because of what happened with the Alaska Airlines flight and with the 737 MAX. And I'm going to do what speakers aren't supposed to and apologize. I have long COVID, and so my voice gets a little scratchy. So what's interesting is that the reason to say the things that the three things, I think the thing that we don't do as an industry is pay attention to what's going on in the news. So as I looked at people's social media pages the last few days, the people had trouble getting to San Diego because of canceled flights. Now I'm looking at the weather, this incredible, horrible system that is hitting the entire United States. And I think about how will they get home, those who are leaving tomorrow morning. There are already a lot of canceled flights. So I think if I were to choose one thing, it is that I think that we have to, as an industry, be much smarter about paying attention to what's in the news and how it impacts everything that we do, from the first selection of a site. And another example would be that I work with a lot of organizations who have DEI policies, and they are looking more stringently at the laws being passed in some states, US states, and in some countries that impact where they meet. So I think that we have to be more holistic in looking at what we do and how we select a site. We can't just say, a great example would be, I had a client, a publishing company years ago. And I remember when the CEO called me, which was not usual. And he said, you know, we just had a wonderful vacation, and he named the city. And he said, I think we should take our show there. And I paused as politely as I could. And I'm thinking, you have a 400,000 square foot trade show plus your meeting, and you want to go to a destination that couldn't really accommodate even 1,000 people. And so what happens is we don't think holistically. Somebody has a good time. They think it's an attractive place. The airlines may be flying there now, but they may not be in 5 years when we're planning. I think that we have to be much smarter and look at what's going on and what's projected to go on.
That makes a lot of sense, but it also leads me kind of spontaneously to my next question, because you were showing us a little bit of how you think about things based on your experience. So in what ways do you approach finding solutions? That is, how does your experience set you apart from others who may be, newer to the industry, don't have the benefit of that experience? What do you know in a way that they don't know? How do you do things in a way that they don't know yet?
I would say it's genetic. Um, I was, as a child, a very curious child. I was the one that my parents, I think, wanted to hide me away because I kept saying how, what, why, when. Um, I am someone who questions things. One of the things that I've done that I recommend to every single person, no matter what they do, but especially in our industry, is to take lessons in improvisation. Improvisation teaches you to go beyond the answer. So if I say to you, how are you today? And you say, fine. I say, well, tell me more. Tell me what's going on in your life. Tell me what's good. So what I do is I take the questions, I take the answers to questions, and I take them the next 10 steps. And it's everything. It's listening. Part of it is listening. Improv is based on good listening. It's doing research. Another example, and I know that there are a few people who are with us today who will be aware of what I'm about to say. There is I mentioned the event that's going on and the issues of flights. So I was curious. I was invited to an event. I'm not attending the meeting, but I was invited to an event, and I had no intention of going, obviously, but I looked at the venue. Why did I do that? The same reason that when I hear from colleagues who are traveling for leisure, that we all do site inspections. It's very difficult to go anywhere without looking around. It's being curious. It's taking it, it's knowing that there's more to learn, always more to learn. So in this particular case, when I looked at the venue, there were things about it that A, didn't reflect the sponsor, B, didn't reflect what they wanted to convey. And I wrote to them and I said, can you tell me why you selected this? The answer, and this is important, the answer was because they agreed to sponsor us, right? So we don't have to pay. Therefore, we're going to accept it as a given that they will do what we need without ever having done even a site selection online. I mean, when you talk about we go back to the start of my work and even the start of my business, I had an IBM self-correcting typewriter. We didn't have the internet. Now it's so easy to learn. So all you have to do is say, that looks good. Let me find out more. Let me ask more questions. So what I do, in fact, I spent an entire year working with a client last year, no, 22, that we're in 24. So in 22, we spent an entire year revising an RFP for us citywide with a 400,000 different, I used 400,000. It was the same square footage as the publisher, different company, but we revised their RFP to reflect and to go deeper on questions. For example, a lot of groups may say, is your event, do you use sustainable food, or are you serving sustainable food? Or do you have a DEI policy? Yes or no? What we did is we went deeper and we said, tell us the results. Tell us what you're doing specifically. Tell us how you vet the vendors that you use. And so it's a matter of going deeper. It's the tell me more. It's the yes and from improvisation. And what I do is in fact, one of the reasons clients have said they hire me is they've heard that I ask hard questions. And I think that we have a responsibility as marketers, as event professionals, as suppliers to the industry to ask more questions. A supplier who doesn't say to a group, what's the purpose of your event? We found that as a big issue when COVID, the worst of COVID began, and we were getting the restrictions of you can meet, but only so many people, 6 feet apart. RFPs at that time didn't say the purpose of our meeting is to gather and have intimate conversations and be able to be face to face with our colleagues. We didn't say that. At least most didn't say that. So what we have to do is we have to learn from what the past is. We have to be aware of it. And then we ask questions. And it doesn't mean, as you said, it doesn't mean that we haven't passed the information along. All you have to do is think beyond the answer. In other words, it's not just this, it's tell me more.
That's fascinating because, of course, the tell me more process is really how you get to the bottom of something, whether it's when police interrogate someone or when we ask questions of a venue. So I find that a really fascinating approach to it. And
You won't be surprised to learn that a lot of the shows that I watch on television and the books I read are mysteries and detective stories because I like to delve a little deeper.
you know, but it's a great approach, and it's a great metaphor, because I imagine for many people, it's a kind of, they go with yes, no questions, closed questions. So they
Correct.
don't get to the bottom of something and maybe hit on the unexpected, that is something they didn't know that they didn't know. But your process is kind of the way to find out what you don't know.
My belief, Charles, is that if it's interesting as we started the program today. To me, the biggest issue is that we don't do, how we have evolved or not, is that we tend to ask yes, no, as you said. And what we have to do is go beyond that. Surprises happen when we didn't ask more questions. A client has a meeting that began yesterday. And the work I do with them doesn't involve my being on site or doesn't involve going to the meeting at all. I sent them a note because of some things, the weather being one, the issue of the airlines being another, to just say, be sure you check this, check in. And I know they will, because the planner is really good. People don't normally do that. They end with the answer and they don't ask for.
Good point. You know, let's get into a couple specifics here. What's your take on event venues, in my phrase, that get it? And what I mean is those that have extraordinary accommodations for people with disabilities. Maybe they have outstanding technical staff. Maybe their high-tech amenities are second to none. In your experience, and your experience is pretty wide, who's doing a good job of things like this?
I hate this question. And anybody who knows me is going to know how much I hate this. So I would say, sadly, nobody. I don't think that anybody excels at everything. And I think it's impossible to excel at everything. I think that it's why when you look at RFPs, you look at what's most important. How are you going to rank and rate a venue or a destination? And what are the most important things to the people who will attend, to those who are exhibiting, to everything that happens. And so I wish I could say, I really do wish I could say that there's some wonderful, outstanding place. I had an experience this past fall and the beginning of winter with a destination, so with the DMO and with one particular hotel company that were interesting because the DMO was into answering yes or no, right? This is what I can tell you. No, we don't do that. That's our policy, blah, blah, blah. I was pleased that the person that I was negotiating with, and I negotiate contracts. A lot of my work is negotiating contracts. I was very pleased when they said, we were told we had to do this, and I don't know why. Let me find out the answer. So if I think the way to judge who does a great job, it's those entities, those people that are willing to say, I don't know, I need to get more information. Let's talk it through. Let's figure this out together.
So in some ways, not having a concrete answer is not necessarily a bad thing, but what you're looking for is the willingness to explore it, and perhaps the willingness to be flexible and change something if it's, within their power to do so?
I think that it's the curiosity. I want others to have, I want everyone to be just like me. I say that not really in jest. I want everyone, I think our industry is not curious enough. And I think we are so used to doing things the way we've always done them that we don't ask better questions. We expect that things will be, for instance, if you're using a destination you've used before, if you're using a hotel brand you've used before, you may think everything will be as it always was. One of the big issues I found when people are looking at hotels is that not only do planners and marketers not ask for who owns the property, often the people in sales that we're dealing with don't know who owns the property, and that can change everything. And so what I'm looking for is someone who is willing to get answers and not say, we don't have time, we're on deadline, they told us to do this. Basically, all the excuses that I would bet all of us who are listening, participating, all of us have experienced the people who won't get more information. And I think it's incumbent upon us who are doing the planning or the venue selection. I think the hack is that we need to be able to say, I have to know more. I don't know the answer either. Let me find out. And let's come up with a way to work this together. We don't do that well. We tend to sort of stomp our feet and want to move on quickly without finding out answers.
I have a next question that's sort of parallel to what you've been talking about. In many ways, you've been kind of talking about the good questions to ask. Similarly, for you, and as we wind down today, what are the red flags people need to look for? And I'm sure they can be varied, but in your experience, what are some of the red flags you found that really mean you should take a step back for at least a second?
I think there are two off the top of my head. The first is that, and this should be disclosed, I do not work on commission like a lot of the people who do venue sourcing. And what I remember the front page of one of the industry publications for which I wrote years ago, when one of the hotel brands said they were going to stop commissions. I remember someone with a third party who was quoted in big type saying, we won't book that. We won't book those properties for any of our clients because we're not going to get anything. That's number one. If someone's not willing to look broadly for you, don't. And that leads into what I think is one of the most dangerous things that has happened, and that are that people are taking shortcuts. There are way too many companies now doing ERFPs that are back to rate, states, and space, and the shortcuts mean that you're not asking. The RFP that I worked on with this client in 22 is 2 parts, and I don't even remember how many pages, but it goes into depth. When you're looking, if you're looking for a meeting for 10 people, maybe that's fine. If you're not, meaning taking shortcuts, if you're going beyond that, and you need to know the purpose, and you need to understand the venue's policies and procedures and how they align with your companies, then you have to go beyond shortcuts. They simply are not good enough. And those to me are big red flags.
That is really illuminating, and I find it just fascinating about what the warning signs are and the technique learned over many years of asking the right questions and never just stopping at one given place. Joan, this has been really fascinating, and I've learned a lot. Even though I've been around in the industry for a while, I really learned a lot about an approach that I think almost anyone listening today can apply, no matter what their budget, no matter what their needs are. So again, I want to thank you, Joan, for this was really wonderful. I want to thank the audience for tuning in today. And Tay, thank you again for your introduction and for giving us some airtime. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you very much to the two of you, both Charles and Joan, for being here today. I just have a couple of things before we wrap up. Just a reminder for everybody, we do have a LinkedIn group titled the same name of the series, Second Tuesday Events for Event Professionals. If you plug that into the search in LinkedIn, it should bring up our group name, and then just make a request to join, and we'll have you admitted to the group. And that'll give you a chance to address questions to anybody was in the event today, either as a participant or to Charles and Joan themselves. And then just a quick reminder that our next episode will be on February 9th with Kimberly Key. She is a consultant, and she will be talking to us about metrics and data points and things like that, all very, very important things that we should be keeping track of. And before we leave, I'm just going to do a quick backup just to show a little bit of personality of Joan and this wonderful, wonderful picture here. I saw this a few months ago. I fell in love with the picture. I love the aesthetic, and I fondly named it Three Jazz Cats. Joan, do you have a quick two sentences to talk about that?
Yeah, it was a gift from a woman I worked with many years ago. We learned when we started working together that we shared the same birthday, not year. And she's now a retired school teacher who's taken up painting, and she did this as a gift to me for my birthday last year. And thank you for using it. It is absolutely one of my most favorite art pieces.
To everyone, Happy New Year. Thank you for joining in, and hope to see you again on another episode. Good luck and have a great year. Take care.